In today's video, we'll be heading over to Sydney, Australia. This place is stunning with landmarks like the Opera House, the bridge, and the harbour. However, what stands out is the scarcity of skyscrapers despite the city having the population, economy, and geographical features that would typically promote the construction of tall buildings. The limited number of existing skyscrapers are not very tall, thanks to a hidden rule restricting Sydney's skyline height. However, this rule is on the verge of being lifted, and this shift could usher in a new era of skyscraper development for the renowned city down under. To start with, it's important to understand that skyscrapers are expensive and aren't constructed just anywhere. The size or fame of a city doesn't automatically grant it a skyline resembling Manhattan. The need for tall buildings typically arises from a combination of economic, population, and geographical factors, as seen in cities like Hong Kong, New York, and Shanghai. Skyscrapers, given their high costs, serves as economic indicators, reflecting the success of a city. To put it simply, they are built by companies that can afford the considerable expense, ranging from $300 million to over $1 billion for a typical skyscraper in the 2020s. Sydney is well endowed with companies that can afford to build such skyscrapers. It hosts 42% of Australia's top 500 companies, and 600 multinational companies have their Asia-Pacific headquarters in the city. As the capital of New South Wales, Sydney contributes significantly to Australia's economy, constituting about 30.6% of the country's GDP. If New South Wales were to be a separate country, it would even rank 19th globally in GDP per capita, surpassing Japan, France, and even the United Kingdom. In short, Sydney is rich and has more than enough money to burn. The city is home to about 5.3 million people and has been Australia's most populous urban centre for over a century before Melbourne recently overtook it a few months ago. Now, with such a large population, there is going to be a clear demand for real estate, as many people need homes and offices. While comparing cities is not entirely straightforward, it's worth noting that Dubai, which boasts the world's current tallest skyline, has a population of only 3 million. Geographically, Sydney is surrounded on nearly every side, with the harbour almost enclosing it and parkland restricting the expansion of the central business district. When the outward expansion is limited, the logical choice is to build upward, right? So then, where are the skyscrapers? I understand what you might be thinking, but what about the skyscrapers you see there? Sure, Sydney does have some, but they're not particularly tall, and unfortunately, there aren't that many of them. Until recently, no skyscraper in Sydney has exceeded 235 meters in height, which is comparatively low when you look at the ones in Melbourne, Chicago, or even Singapore. So why has it taken so long for this major international city to construct a skyscraper taller than 235 meters? And why hasn't a super tall, meaning a building higher than 300 meters, been attempted here? Especially when nearby Melbourne already has one with 2 more on the way. To understand this, let's travel back in time to over 100 years ago. At the start of the 20th century, while the US was building tall structures, Australia was most hesitant about skyscrapers. When a 14-story building was erected in 1912, it caused quite a panic. Despite its current modest height, at the time, people hadn't seen such a tall building, and there were concerns that firefighters couldn't reach the upper floors in case of a disaster. Following that, in 1912, the city implemented the Height of Buildings Act, which restricts new construction to a height of 45 meters, approximately only about 13 stories. This led to Sydney to expand outwards into the suburbs instead, and eventually become larger than all of London. The law remained in place until 1957. To give you some perspective, this was New York's skyline in 1957, and this was the height limit imposed on Sydney's buildings. However, Sydney found a way to overcome its fear of tall structures, and that is through its affection for iconic landmarks. In the 1970s, the city constructed the tallest tower in the southern hemisphere, the 305-meter Center Point Tower. This golden monument has become a major tourist attraction, trailing only the Opera House and the Harbor Bridge in popularity, despite not being a typical skyscraper, as it's more of a rotating restaurant and viewing platform suspended on a giant pole. It managed to avoid Sydney's strict regulations. In fact, new rules were established to safeguard the city's new icon, ensuring that no building could surpass the tower's height, capping all skyscrapers at 235 meters. However, things always change, and the initial exception to this regulation emerged in 2020 with the introduction of Crown Tower. This 270-meter skyscraper, funded by a casino, surpasses the observation deck of Center Point Tower. The fact that wealthy individuals could bypass these regulations has raised eyebrows. Nonetheless, the precedent was set, the seal was broken, and there was no turning back. Recognizing that a 270-meter skyscraper didn't lead to disaster, Sydney's long-standing fear of tall buildings swiftly crumbled, leading to a revision of the rules. Now the new limit for tall structures is 330 meters, allowing for super tall buildings for the first time. And there's a surge of proposals for skyscrapers like the 263-meter Salesforce Tower, designed by Foster Plus Partners. The Barangaroo Tower is designed by Renzo Piano, which recently received a height increase. There's also One Sydney Harbor, the Twin Tower 338 Pitt Street, with an Art Deco inspiration, and the 270-meter 505 George Street. Sydney's first super tall building proposal at 56 Pitt Street, currently still without renderings, was initially planned to be 314 meters tall, but there are reports it might reach 330 meters. Now the situation has changed, and there's a debate on whether it's positive. Did Sydney's laws against tall buildings protect the city in some way? Well, maybe to some extent, but let's still examine the facts. Sydney requires more space due to its expected population growth of 60 to 80%, reaching 8 million people by 2050. According to a government study, lifting skyscraper height limits could add over 2.9 million square meters of floor area, a 30% boost to the current capacity of the Central Business District. Despite safeguarding its skyline for an extended period, Sydney has now opened the floodgates. Whatever is constructed here will have a lasting impact on the city. This puts significant responsibility on the capable architects and construction teams leading these projects to ensure they are executed correctly. And that ends our journey through the existing and upcoming skyline of Sydney, Australia. What are your thoughts about this one? Do you think the country has made a good decision to finally allow the construction of super tall skyscrapers after years of restricting this? Let me know what you think in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to keep posted for more interesting content such as this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.